Man, that voice just comes out of nowhere. Good morning, everybody. It's early morning, and this is awesome. Welcome to the Sports on the Positive Tip Podcast. This is Kenny and
Kenny Squared.
Yes, and we're going to start there with Kenny Squared in Cleveland. So, Kenny, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's morning, so
It's morning, yeah. All right. The Browns. Let's start there. And I gotta really also want to touch on the Cavaliers and see if there's any excitement about them. But the Browns, the Odell Beckham stuff since we last talked, that he got released. As far as I know, he hasn't caught on with any team yet, right? Has anybody signed him?
No, he cleared waivers yesterday. So now he's a free agent. So anyone could grab him. He had said before, if like one of these bad teams claimed him, he was going to cause issues. So that kind of told you no one's going to claim him.
Well, none of the bad teams. So he wants to go to a really good team, and some of the good teams might not want him to be a distraction. So what was it all like? Because after that, the Browns went out and just smoked the Bengals. So what was the reaction there in Cleveland with the whole Odell stuff, and then the big win on Sunday?
I think it kind of got to the point where Odell was more of a distraction than a help. And also in general, it seems like he's not necessarily done a ton recently. I mean, he's only targeted a few times, but Baker Mayfield threw passes to 8 different receivers on Sunday. So,
oh, wow. Okay.
It kind of seems like I don't blame them for making the trade. I think you got to at least shoot for it. But even from the very beginning, it didn't seem like the Baker to Odell connection was really ever a fit.
Yeah.
And it's weird. Truth be told, I feel like not a lot of people are that upset about it. Especially when you're coming off of when you score 40 without your top receiver like that, I think it says a lot. But I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where Odell lands. I also bought an Odell t-shirt because I figured because of the Giants connection to be fun. And of course, now that's kind of worthless, but
well, I think that you're right. The big win like that, especially over a division rival, interstate rival, certainly probably took the Odell stuff right off the back pages there. The Mayfield seemed to have some very, I'll use the word classy, comments about Odell after. And so do you think this is a turning point for the Browns?
I think it is. Kind of looking at last year, they started out kind of slow. And then Odell tears his ACL and they go on a run, which leads them to their first playoff game in a long time. So I kind of feel like maybe the same thing might happen. But a lot of it, I think a big test of that will be this week they play New England, who New England isn't the Patriots of the past, but they're still a very good team. Uh-huh. And the Browns have won, I believe it's 5 of their last 6 meetings with the Bengals. That's one of those teams that they kind of have their number.
Right.
So if they can carry that momentum next week and beat Bill Belichick, I think that would kind of say okay, this team actually didn't ever really need Odell. So
wow. Okay. Interesting. Speaking of teams that didn't need Odell, you had some really strong comments last week about the Giants, and you're a die-in-the-wool, Giant fan, and I was a little bit surprised actually to hear you say, you're done, you're kind of tired of this. You weren't done with the team, obviously, but just kind of tired of the losing. Hey, tear it down and start all over again. And then lo and behold, they go out and a huge upset against I think, a little bit overrated Raiders. Although I think that they'll be there at the end because I think they got rid of also a big distraction with Gruden. So sitting there Sunday, I don't know how much of it you watched, but I'm sure you were following along. what were some of your thoughts, and what are your thoughts on what was a huge win and a pretty well balanced game they played? They finally got some big defensive stops and things like that. So what were your thoughts on the Giants' big win over the Raiders?
Well, you said it very nicely. I was not expecting that at all. I didn't watch a ton of the game on the same time. Like, I followed some of the highlights. But yeah, I feel like it was a pretty balanced game. It seemed like the Giants actually did stuff well from all aspects of the field. I don't know, Saquon Barkley. Oh,
Hey,
here's little Ellie.
hey, Ellie.
It seems like Saquon Barkley kind of has been more disappointing, but I don't know. Maybe Daniel Jones might stick around. I don't know. It just seems like, because he didn't have a great game, but he had a pretty good game. I think the defense shined when it needed to shine. But I'm still kind of because it seems like this team could go on a little bit of a run, but I look at the rest of the division. Jalen Hurts seems to be getting better and better. Obviously, Dallas, aside from their debacle on Sunday, they've had a really great season. Washington, they have a great defense, but who knows what they're doing at quarterback. It just still seems like they're still destined to be mediocre in that division.
Yeah. I don't know what to make of the Giants, to be honest. I mean, sometimes when they put it all together like this, and I think I said this last week, that Giants have some really good playmakers that just can't seem to stay healthy, whether it's Barkley and their receivers. They've got more playmakers than my Jets do, but they just can't seem to stay on the field. And their offensive line certainly is well improved over the last few years. I don't know what to make of Jones either. Sometimes he'll have these games where it's like, oh wow, this is the guy, and then he'll make just these awful plays. But I think that was a big win. On Sunday, you're still low keying it a little bit. I didn't hear you say that was a big win, but because you're still cautiously optimistic, I would say it seems like you are.
Yeah, I mean, it was a big win.
Okay.
Especially against a team the whole AFC West is really, really good. So beating any of those teams is impressive. They came close to beating the City last week. So it is a big win. But at the same time, I'm looking at the overall picture of this year, and it doesn't seem like they have a great shot of winning, of making the playoffs. I mean, they're 3-6.
Yeah.
And to me, if you're at the point where you're good enough to win a few games, to me, it just hurts you in the end. Because it stinks to be what would it be, 6-11, 7-10? Because then you have kind of a mediocre draft pick, then you're still not good enough to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
it's kind of what I talk about in the NBA, or being the 8 or 7 seed is kind of you're stuck. Me personally, I would rather see the Giants kind of take a couple other years to, if you're going to be mediocre, just be horrible, and then you can rebuild from there.
Okay. All right. So let me ask you this last question on the Giants, and then we'll just go around the NFL real quick. 8-8. If they finished 8-8, would you consider that progress?
Yeah, I would consider that progress.
Okay.
Because it seems like the last 5 years or so, it's been oh yeah, we're 5-11 or 6-10 or 4-12. So at least making it to that 500 mark would feel a lot better.
Well, wait a second. I said 8-8. I'm still thinking the 16-game season, right?
Oh, so that's right.
8-9.
So 9-8.
9-8, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Which is interesting, because I would assume it's because of the extra game. I'm noticing traditionally when they have these interconference games, which they never call out anymore, that used to be a big deal, right? So the Giants playing the Raiders. Aren't the Giants, I think they're not only playing the AFC West, they also have a game against somebody else. Didn't they have a game against somebody else in the AFC?
I believe they play Miami, if I remember right. Here, let me check.
Yeah, that's right. And Miami is definitely on their schedule. And I think that's because of the extra that 17th game. So switch over to the Jets for a second. It's leaning towards that Zach Wilson will be healthy or healthy enough to play on Sunday, but it looks like they're going to go with Mike White. What are your thoughts there?
If I'm the Jets, I play the hot hand. I heard it said pretty well, and I'm going to see if you agree with this. Now, do you care if Mike White ends up being your franchise quarterback?
Do I care? No.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm like you. I just want to win. But we've seen these stories before. Mike White could be the next Kurt Warner, who came out of nowhere. Was a backup, was packing groceries, and then finally got an opportunity to play and had a Hall of Fame career. Took 2 different teams to the Super Bowl. So you just never know. You never know. And it's like this guy in Washington. He was just a all-world college quarterback. I mean, he just was killing it. But he's just never gotten the opportunity in the NFL. And he's playing okay, but he could all of a sudden really turn it around. And it's the same with Mike White. I never heard of him. I knew he was the backup.
Me neither.
I knew about the whole Flacco thing over the summer. I'm like, why did they cut Flacco? I'm like, they should have kept a veteran backup, but or they, did they cut him or trade him? I think they cut him. And then they traded back for him, giving up a draft pick. But I don't care where it comes from. I mean, Wilson might be the guy. He might not be. Another good example on that is Arizona. And I know his first name was Josh, but I'm forgetting his last name. But
Josh Rosen?
Josh Rosen. He was like the next all-world thing. And, along comes the real all-world guy, pushes him right out. And, you just never know how these things, Kyler Murray, I mean, he's just unbelievable. But you just never know how these things work, So I don't care. I don't care. If he's a franchise quarterback, great. Anything else surprise you this past weekend? As Buffalo losing, I thought was huge. I mean, and then we can talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers for a second. But did anything surprise you this past weekend?
I think you nailed it with Buffalo. Like, the defense holds Jacksonville to 9 points, and you can't even score more than 9. Kind of an issue there. I guess we can dive more deep into Aaron Rodgers, but obviously they probably could have used him on Sunday against Kansas City, who also still seems kind of weird. I mean, they only scored 13 against Jordan Love and the Packers.
I think they'll take the win and run with it because something's off in KC. I can't figure out what it is, but I think they'll just they don't care. It's just a W, But they definitely have to straighten out because I'm sure their schedule gets tough because that was that was on the schedule. That was a tough game. There's no doubt if Aaron Rodgers was playing, that the Packers probably would have won that game pretty easily. I felt bad for Jordan Love. I mean, he didn't look prepared at all. And the coach, to his credit, said it was solely his fault. And I mean, why would he look? Why would he be all that prepared? I mean, Aaron Rodgers, you're not gonna play if this guy's healthy. And last thing we were expecting was for this to happen. So let me start with you then. Let's go into, because that's been a big story. It's I think Aaron Rodgers is one of those huge stars still in the NFL, especially with Drew Brees retiring. Tom Brady obviously still playing, but I mean, Rodgers at 36 years old last year was the MVP. He just seems to continue to get better and better, but something off with him in Green Bay. It's like he never got over them hiring this young coach who seems to be a really good coach. And
yeah,
but then I just wonder why athletes in general sometimes, and we see it with politicians, we see it all over the place, just don't tell the truth. I don't understand that. You know, I mean, one of the worst moments last year, and it came up again, was the whole, you know, Francisco Lindor and Jeff Mcneil brawl, because, you know, one of the Met players revealed that was a really bad fight, that it took several players to pull Lindor off of Mcneil, and they never liked each other, which is also one of the reasons why I think he's pushing for, you know, Javi Baez, you know, to be there. But just the stuff afterwards, fans would have understood if you had said nothing. If you had just said, listen, we're going to keep that, you know, among us, let everybody assume, whatever. Or would have just came out and said, we had a disagreement, it got carried away. But then, you know, there was a squirrel or a rat or a raccoon, whatever they said was running around, you know, back there that caused the commotion. But Aaron Rodgers was worse because it's a health issue, you know. And again, I think we talked about wherever anybody stands on getting a vaccine, not getting a vaccine. I understand both sides of the story, so it's not a criticism on that. But if you're asked a direct question, you know, and you say, and especially you're Aaron Rodgers, such a big star in the league, and trying to forge this other career, you know, hosting Jeopardy and all these commercials that he's on, you would think he would just come straight forward, you know, and say, no, and here's why. And this is what I'm saying, but I'm going to keep myself safe. I'm going to keep my teammates safe, whatever, you know. Or just not answer and say, hey, I'm gonna keep that private. But then maybe that would have been worse. But to just and then it takes him 2 of these podcasts that he's on to admit it finally that, I mean, come on. And he definitely should know better. He's media savvy. He's 37 years old. He's been in the NFL a long time. And you know, and he's a huge star. He has to know better. He has to know that if he catches COVID, that's not going to end well. So anyway, I'm so sorry. I gave you my take because I was thinking about the whole Mets thing this year. I just don't understand the not being straightforward. But what was your take?
Yeah, I think you kind of nailed it there, because like honestly, I don't really care whether you're vaccinated or not. That's a decision you have to make. And I think especially with Aaron Rodgers, where he came out and said like he's allergic to the mRNA vaccines, and then right around training camp is when they pulled the other one. So like, I think if he had even just said that, like people would have obviously understood. Like, and now he's being made out to be a hardcore liar, and rightfully so. Like, if you're asked were you vaccinated, you say yes, like, and you're not, like there's no way around that. And it's interesting because, like, to me, there's a few things that I don't understand with how players are dealing with this, because first of all, there's a lot of people that keep saying like there's a mandate. There's no mandate in the NFL. There probably will never be one in any of the sports because it's a collective bargaining thing. But like a lot of the players that aren't necessarily revealing like what their status is eventually, whether it's there's an outbreak and you have to quarantine longer, or like in the NBA, like if you're like, if we would know that LeBron James isn't vaccinated or is vaccinated by whether or not he can play at Madison Square Garden. So like, I think all of that to me is kind of weird and how they deal with it. But my biggest issues with Aaron Rodgers here is one, like I understand not trying to reveal everything to the media. The media can be very crazy and wild, especially with a guy that's such a lightning rod like Aaron Rodgers. But you do have to be honest, because now I question all of the stuff that he was talking about in the summer about the issues with the GM and wanting to be traded and not having a say. Like, what if he was just being dramatic? And then also, like, part of me questions what, like, how much has he actually done as far as like making sure that he's done all of his research and everything like that. Like, you open yourself up to people questioning everything, not just the one thing. And then secondly, like I understand a lot of the NFL rules seem kind of weird. Like non-vaccinated players have to get tested every day, which, okay, I can kind of get that. But like, then they still have to wear masks everywhere. It kind of seems a little odd.
Yeah.
But at the same time, Aaron Rodgers was like, well, there's no sign behind this, so I'm not going to do it. And I don't know if you saw yesterday, the Packers got fined $300,000, as well as Aaron Rodgers and another player got fined $14,000.
Yeah.
I mean, $14,000 for Aaron Rodgers is nothing.
Yeah.
But I think just kind of the idea of, well, I'm just going to absolutely disregard these rules because they don't make sense. Because that was another lie that no one's really talked about. He's like, I followed every NFL rule to the T except for wearing a mask during the press conferences. But he didn't. He was out partying on Halloween night. So
yeah,
I don't know. Integrity is important.
Yeah, it is, and especially when you want to take your career to where he wants to take his career. Now, here's the thing, though. We also have short memory sports fans, right? I don't know off the top of my head who they're playing this week, but if he plays and they come out and they have a huge win, they're still 7-2 even with the loss, right? So let's say they come out, they have a huge win. I think a lot, especially in Green Bay, they'll forget about it. They're like, whatever. Or if they go on a run and they finish the season 15-2, something like that, and get to the Super Bowl. You think at the Super Bowl press conferences they're going to be asking them about it? Probably not. We have a very short memory, but I think that I saw where he was on something like 60% of the State Farm commercials, and it went down to 1% of them actually showing it in rotation. Which, State Farm they didn't cut ties with him, but they, pulled back right away. And probably that's the thing to let it die down a little bit. I just think that especially though, quarterback, any other sport, you look at baseball, you look at basketball, right? Hockey, then there's not really one of the most important positions. You can make an argument, right? In baseball, maybe pitcher is probably the most important position, but it's such a team sport, as is football, but it's not even close. The most important position of football is the quarterback. And the quarterback typically is the leader of the team, especially of the offense, right? So again, when you start to think about what you just said, is he being truthful? And a lot of the players said the right thing, especially the players that's played with him for a while. Randall Cobb came out and defended him, and they're going to say the right thing in public. But again, just like with John Gruden, you could just sense that there was something, behind the scenes when they lost. They got killed by the Bears, who aren't that good. You could just see none of the players were around him on the sidelines. People were avoiding him. It just, so it'll be interesting to see if that happens with Rodgers. But I think that a little bit different here, where the players, they want to win and they know that he's the best option to win. No shade on Jordan Love. I'm sure he's very talented. He just wasn't ready to play. He just was unprepared. So that position of leadership like that, you just have to take so seriously in terms of what you say. And this is such a serious issue. This is, so many people have died throughout the country. It's just, and he himself did admit that he was very sick for a couple of days. This is no joke. I think we've all been impacted by COVID, whether it's ourselves or someone we know, someone in our families. It's it's a lot more serious than I think he made it out to be. So I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be interesting to watch, this week, what happens with them if they play him. I would assume they will, because if he passes everything that he needs to pass, I would assume. I think he has to take a heart test or something like that. Outside of that, if he passes that, I would assume he plays. All right, let's jump over to the NBA real quick, and then we'll jump into some fun facts here as the award season in baseball starting. And so the Knicks, I don't know what to make of them too much yet. It's the NBA is like that. It's kind of week to week almost. But I want to first start with your Cavaliers, although that was a terrible break for Colin Sexton. It didn't look like a bad injury. And sure enough, he's got a torn meniscus. He's probably out for the year, I would assume, or for a good period of time. but they've assembled some pretty good young players. I mean, is there any excitement there? What are they, 7 or 8-4, something like that? Is there any excitement there for them?
No, and I don't understand why.
This Evan Mosley guy, man, he's going to be a very, very. I don't want to go on a limb and say he's going to be a star, but he's a very good player. He's somebody that they could definitely build around, no doubt. But no excitement there for the Cavs at all. Okay.
No, I think right now it's all about the Browns, especially with like the stuff that's been happening this last couple weeks. I could see that shift happening, say February when like the NFL season's over, and especially if the Cavs are still in it. But oh my gosh, see, that was the first time, because usually I don't really watch a ton of Cavs games. It's hard to get the channels here because I don't have cable. So so watching them against the Knicks, and oh my gosh, Ricky Rubio, like, wow, where has that been all of his career?
Can I admit something to you? Until that game, I didn't know Ricky Rubio was still in the NBA. I thought he had went back overseas. I just, and no shade on him. He's been a solid player. I mean, he was taunted as being a star, when he came into the league, but that never really panned out. But I didn't know he was still in the league, but he couldn't miss. I mean, it was just one of those nights where he was just on fire. And he still is very fast, too. Yeah, the Knicks couldn't keep up with them. They just got, the Knicks were making that nice comeback, and then Cavs just couldn't miss. None of those guys were missing 3-pointers, But that's an interesting team that they have there. I think they have a good coach. Bickerstaff has a pedigree there. His father was a really good coach. And, he did well when he got the chance in Houston for a while, but they didn't give him a chance at the permanent position. The Cavs did. So it's going to be interesting, but I guess I'm not too surprised that there's no excitement around them. So talk about the Knicks. In my opinion, one of the best wins that I've seen them in these 2 years since they've gotten good was that Friday night win against the Bucks. I sat there with my mouth open. I couldn't believe how well they played from the second quarter on. What were your thoughts? Hopefully you got a chance to watch some of that, because I think that was a national game on ESPN.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it, and I wholeheartedly agree. The Bucks obviously are a great team. They were missing who were they missing? Was it Holiday? They're missing somebody, right?
Holiday played. Chris.
Who was it?
Their second
Chris
player.
Middleton.
Middleton. Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I know he wasn't there, but I agree with you. One of their best wins in a long time, definitely their best win in the season. Because it seems like a lot of times when this Knicks team gets down, they try really, really hard at just hoisting up threes. You saw a little bit of that against the Cavs, where they kept just kind of falling behind it. Oh, let's just shoot a three. Kemba Walker is just throwing threes left and right. Evan Fournier has not hit a three all night, and he's just chucking them up. So I think it's a good, I think kind of like what you said, this team very much lives and dies by the three. But I think also showing that fight against the defending champions. We're not talking about the Charlotte Hornets or the Pelicans without Zion. This is a really, really good team. And I think it shows that this team can actually compete with some of the top dogs. Now, does that mean that they'll make the finals? I don't know about that, but I think it really does show that this team is legit. Yes, like any other team, they have flaws, but I don't know. I'm still very, very excited about this team.
Yeah, I'm with you. To your point with the threes, they fell into that trap against Cleveland. They didn't fall into that trap against the Bucks. They were going into the paint, and they definitely didn't fall into that trap in the win against the Sixers the other night. They definitely kept taking it to, again, Sixers were missing Embiid, but listen, take the win and get out of town. I think they had lost 9 straight in Philadelphia. And last year, the 2 that they lost there, if you remember, were excruciating losses. against the Sixers. They had the game right there. This is when they were first half of the season. They were trying to come up, and remember we were saying they just didn't know how to close out games. And the Sixers, some of those losses I could see. So I was glad to just see them go into Philly and get a big win like that. The Knicks have something going here. I think that I liked Elfrid Payton and Reggie Bullock and a few of the guys that are no longer on the team, but they replaced them with guys that are better. I mean, Kemba Walker obviously better than Elfrid Payton, and Reggie Bullock, Evan Fournier is better than Reggie Bullock. Bullock was an excellent defensive player, but I like the moves that they made to really shore the team up. And Derrick Rose has fit in just like a glove. I mean, he just a perfect. Now he's really settled in and he knows his role and he's coming off the bench and it's just, I could see sixth man of the award for him down the road because he just that was the turnaround when they brought him in against the Bucks. He just had just this spectacular game. They just don't have to depend solely on Julius Randle, which I love.
Yeah.
What did you make of the whole Jokic from Denver? And have you seen that? And, him and Marquise Morris got into a little thing, and now their brothers are threatening the Morris twins on Twitter. Morris actually started that. That was a dirty hit he did on Jokic, and Jokic pushed him. And Morris is actually hurt, from it. I don't know how much of that you followed, but that was a nasty game with Denver and Miami the other night. I'm like, why would they have a rivalry?
Right.
But any teams are standing out to you so far?
Well, I'll comment really quick on the Jokic thing. I watched that play and I was like, what in the world? But also to me, anytime you bring beef into Twitter, it's probably going to stay there because people tend to just like hide behind that facade. But also, why are you bringing like family into it? To me, that's a little bit too extra.
Yeah.
And I would say as far as like surprises, I don't think we could go any further without talking about the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah.
They're 9-1.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said about championship pedigree, and they added some good pieces as well. But, Curry, Green, and Thompson's not back yet, right?
I was looking. Is he back? I didn't think he was, but I see stats.
He's back yet. But, the Warriors are good. And they finally now are getting a chance to play in front of fans in that new arena. And so I think that's probably making a big difference for them as well. But the Warriors 9-1, I would say that's a surprise. I'm not overly surprised. 9-1 is really good out of his first 10 games. And I think the NBA, that's what you do. You take it in those 10-game chunks, throughout the year. And 9-1 to start out with, man, that's really good, especially out west.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, but that's my biggest surprise because I kept looking, and also Steph Curry, didn't he drop 50 yesterday or the day before?
He's unbelievable.
He had a big game recently, and he's
also getting better as he gets older, right? He's also getting better. You hope he doesn't have a big injury because I think he can play at this level probably for another 5 years at least. So we'll take that. We'll watch the Warriors for sure. I would say here, though, on the other side, the Nets still floundering. I don't think it's a big surprise without Kyrie, but I'm probably surprised that Harden has struggled the way he has. He seems like he showed up a little bit out of shape again, but with this whole new, not drawing foul thing, I think that's really impacted him a lot. And that could get ugly here because, you got – Durant's not going to take the losing for sure, So that could definitely get ugly here, and especially if Kyrie continues to sit out. So that to me has been – I'm not overly surprised. I'm more surprised that Harden has been this bad. I don't want to say he's this bad because even here, he's still a solid NBA player, but he's not the superstar that he was. All right, let's jump into fun facts. It's award season. I'll give you mine, and I'll let you wrap up, and you can talk a little bit about – your favorite for the award. I've probably mentioned this on the podcast before. I think probably when Tom Seaver passed away. So the Cy Young Award, and I'm always fascinated by both the MVP and Cy Young. I'll give two real quick. And this one you might know, although I thought Keith Hernandez probably really got robbed here. But the National League has done that historically. They'll give it to the player that means the most on a team. And so the only time there was a tie was 1979, and that was when the Pirates won everything, and Keith Hernandez won the batting title, and he tied with Willie Stargell for MVP. So they were co-MVPs, first time ever. Stargell was the heart and soul of that Pirates team, and had an excellent year, but Hernandez just had his best year, at a relatively young age. He had just this all-world season. But he shared the MVP award. The Cardinals, weren't really in the playoff hunt that year. So maybe that was a big factor, but it was just odd that there was a tie, But the one to me that really stood out, and I could go to a couple of MVPs, but the Cy Young that stood out was, and Tom Seaver, he still won 3 Cy Youngs, right? But 1971, they gave it to Ferguson Jenkins of the Cubs. Ferguson Jenkins, I don't want to take anything away. He had an excellent year. He's 24-13 on a good team. Both the Mets and Cubs were in contention that year. They were both good teams, but they didn't get to the playoffs either one. 24-13, a 2.77 ERA. That's an excellent year. That should win you Cy Young anytime, right? Tom Seaver was 20-10, right? Not 24-13, but 20-10 is, I think, pretty good. He had a 1.76 ERA. To me, that should have been case closed, but they made it up the next year with Seaver. I think he won again in 73 and in 75, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. But that was like a travesty. He should have definitely gotten the Cy Young that year. 1.76 ERA and winning 20 games. I mean, come on. And on a good team. I mean, they were contending, the Mets were that year. They didn't win it, but anyway. That's my fun fact. What do you got?
All right. Well, I have one on MVP. I have a football one and then a whole bunch of World Series ones.
Okay.
So I'll start with the MVP. This year is going to mark the first time since 1987 that neither MVP will make the playoffs. Andre Dawson of the Cubs won it in 87, as well as George Bell with the Blue Jays. Because all the finalists, none of them made the playoffs. Marcus Semien, Vlad Guerrero Jr., Shohei Ohtani, and the National League, Harper, Soto, which is kind of ironic that both of them made it, and Tatis. So, and also back then, obviously, only 4 teams made the playoffs, so it's a lot harder. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting.
Quick on the NFL. So Josh Allen of the Dolphins sacked Josh Allen of the Bills. It's the first time a player has sacked someone with the same name as them. I just think that's kind of funny.
That was interesting. Yeah.
All right. So obviously the Braves winning the World Series. So a lot of very interesting facts came from this. So first, the last 2 attempts in a 162 game season were 40-41 and 41-40 halfway through the season. So Nationals in 2019, the Braves this year, very, very similar paths to the World Series. Also, this to me is kind of interesting as well. So on July 13th, so not late in this, or not like that early in the season, the Braves had a 0.3% chance of winning the World Series.
Wow.
And they made it happen.
Wow.
Also, kind of one of those like odd stats. And then I'll get to 2 that I think were really interesting. So Terence Gore, who you might know, kind of like one of those role players. He got into 1 game this year in the postseason. He has more World Series rings now than Ted Williams, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Barry Bonds, and Mike Trout combined.
Wow.
He's only played in 102 games and has 0 home runs and 1 RBI in his career.
Wow. That's amazing.
So very interesting.
That's amazing.
So last 2 here I have Will Smith of the Braves. Obviously the Braves, they're their bullpen, calling them the night shift. It became like one of their big parts of why they won. Will Smith had 0 ERA and 11 appearances in the playoffs. He had 6 saves and 6 opportunities. No other pitcher, and this is the interesting part, no other pitcher on any team had more than 1 save.
Wow.
Out of all 10 teams.
Wow.
So
wow.
We always talk about how important it is to have that lockdown closer. And baseball has kind of shifted away from having your set 9th inning guy, but Will Smith proves that you need it. All right, last one. This is interesting. A huge homage to Hank Aaron here. So when Rodgers Acuna got hurt towards ACL, the Braves were 44-44. Also, the Braves won 44 games before. And what were the fourth? A lot of Hank Aaron times having the number 44, pretty much always in center field this year. So definitely a good. I love the fact that the Braves won because it really paid respect in a way that the All-Star game couldn't have, giving City their first World Series in 26 years. So
yeah,
there you go, Braves.
That is amazing. I didn't know any of that, and the homage to Hank Aaron, for them to win on the year that Hank Aaron passed away, it's amazing. And go back to Will Smith for a second, man. He was Mariano Rivera-like in the postseason, and I remember going into the postseason, I said he was going to be their Achilles heel. Boy, was I wrong, because he wasn't that great in the regular season. Maybe I'm going by the Mets, got to him a couple of times, but he was really, really good, and not good. He was great in the postseason. So that's awesome. All right, Kenny, take us home. Those are great facts.
I did get one real quick.
Okay.
So acquisitions was a big part. They had 12 home runs in the postseason from all of the guys they acquired like during the season. Also the most ever. So
wow. All right, those are interesting. Technology, right? It's crazy. Those are some great 12 home runs. I mean, that's unbelievable. They did just by far the best trade deadline I think that I can remember. So anyway, this has been great. Kenny, take us home, man.
All right, this is Kenny Squared End.
Kenny.
With Sports on the Positive Tip. We will see you guys next week.
All right. See you next week.